We're going to kind of get into this, fairly quickly, just because we've kept some people waiting online, obviously. But this is an awesome presentation that's going to be done today. I'm super grateful that Sean Dillon and his family has come all the way down from Oliver to talk to us about speed flying in Western Canada. We have Tyler Gillis here, president from HPAC, just to also talk about the new program that is now part of HPAC. And how I'd like to find out how the club's going to integrate speed flying into our community or just help out with that. So with no further ado, I'm going to get Sean up here to come and talk about this, and then we're going to start rolling the dock. All right, buddy, come on down. Here you go, buddy. What's that?
Am I allowed to have beer online?
Of course.
All right.
It's okay.
Why am I talking about this? Where's Tyler?
Well, we're just going to get you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Why not? Then we'll show the documentary.
Okay.
And then you guys can.
Oh, we're doing the documentary first? Yeah. Oh, okay.
First, so introduce the doc.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Cool. Hey, guys. Yeah, so my name is Sean Dillon. I was approached by a producer in the Okanagan once we met, and he realized how cool speed flying was. So it took him about 2 years to convince me to expose myself in front of his camera with all the shenanigans that we've been getting away with speed flying. In the movie will highlight it, but the Okanagan is a mecca for speed flying just because it, as you know, geographically the terrain, there's no trees, there's no forest. So for speed flying, we get to proximity fly amazingly to the terrain. So it's kind of like a hub for the very small community of speed flying. So that's what the producer Dave Mai from DM Productions was really focused on, was how the Okanagan gathered the speed flying community because of the road access, the really long vertical flights that we had, and the ability to proximity fly. So it's kind of the hub for Canada. We always have, every long weekend, we always have pilots traveling from Alberta, northern BC, the coast. We get together in very large numbers of 25 and fly together. So yeah, the producer, like I said, Dave Mai, wanted to film and expose that. And we were looking for funding, and TELUS picked us up. So they wanted to have our story available for TELUS Optic TV. So that's what this film's going to be about. This is the 30-minute edit that we gave to TELUS. They funded us for a year and really tailored the edit so that it was like cable television. So it's pretty cool to be able to present speed flying at a PG kind of level. The edit is very family friendly, and it's meant to like explain what the sport is about to the common folk. Within our pilot friends, it's all normal, but to the average person, what we do is actually pretty crazy. So that's the focus of the film, was to put it on TELUS Optic television, nationally on television right now. It's available. So like I said, the common folk can hear our story, hear our struggles, but the best part about like any flight is the victory, is launching and landing safely. So yeah, here's the movie, I guess. And it's called Speedwing. And yeah, I'm excited to show it to everybody. So I hope you enjoy.
There's so much intelligence in every creature. Like, how did a feather get made? How did it already know what an airfoil was? Same with trees, right? They even know about flying. Maple trees make little spinners. And that tree had to understand gravity, it had to understand aerodynamics, it had to understand that it needed the seed further away from it so that that seed would grow. Like, there's just so much intelligence out there. With intention, you can make it kinetic and you make all these things happen.
Are you ready to see somebody's need for speed? I can put our wings in the wind faster than you could ever believe.
My first element of freedom was snow, was fresh tracks. I still remember those first snowboard turns that I ever got to take in fresh snow, and it was just, it felt like flying. That led me to becoming a mechanized ski guide. So I did that for 20 years every winter. I got paid really well just to have fun with people and ski fresh snow. As anyone progresses, you're just hitting bigger and bigger cliffs. And I was getting to the point where I could probably base jump some of these cliffs, like just with what I was hitting on skis. And then that's when I saw Speedflying. I had no clue the sport existed, and I was just like wishing that there was a better way to merge parachutes and skiing. So when I saw this, it was like almost like heavenly sent. I was just like, someone made me exactly what I was thinking of, and it was boom, right there in front of me, all of a sudden. It was Antoine Moton, François Bon, and so they developed a really small glider so that you can skim the ground while you're still skiing. To see like how fast and low these guys were flying, like it just made me instantly realize that I had so much to learn. I'm like, I'm already behind the game here. Like, these guys are so good.
That's one of the coolest things about Speedwings is integrating skis into flying. We call this speed riding. So where normally you would see maybe a massive cliff, and that's something you would completely avoid on your skis. Well, with a Speedwing attached, you could ride right up to that cliff and then fly right off of it with your Speedwing, come down to the bottom of it and continue flying and riding down the mountain with your skis and your Speedwing overhead.
Eventually, people just started foot launching these things, myself included, and then a division of the sport kind of came out where we call it speed flying. Like, I remember a lot of Europeans at the time would put their Speedwings away with their skis and thought people were crazy for foot launching them. Once I had that word, once I knew it was called Speedflying, it was a lot easier to refine. Just typed in Speedflying lessons and it popped up at Cloud9 in Salt Lake City. I went down there for 10 days straight, an intensive crash course.
Speedflying in Canada is, I think, a challenge. We don't have these big trams like Europe does, where you can just take a chairlift ride to the top of the mountain. We don't have mountains that are okay with us flying in their airspace.
In Europe, a lot of the ski hills allow speed flying and paragliding and hang gliding right off the top of their lifts. They have designated areas, even on their maps, they have little paraglider logos to signal where you can launch from, where you can land. And in Canada, we don't have that same sort of access.
A lot of it is hiking yourself up a mountain that maybe you've never flown off before. It's always a little bit crazier. You're never gonna have the progression that you would in places like France or Italy because you can't get the mileage.
Being the only speed flyer that I knew of on the coast definitely slowed my progress down. I didn't want to die doing this, so I knew I was going to have to put the time in because I had to be extra cautious because there was no one at the edge to tell me to stop. I was putting a lot of my time in at the Chief, hiking it pretty much every night. I just spent my time on that edge. I'd sleep overnight, so I'd wake up there in the morning, always looking for how grass is moving or how the leaves are moving in the valley, how the clouds are forming. When you're paying attention to that invisible force, you are definitely a lot more connected to the environment. I remember getting to look down that face for my first time and feeling the lift of a wing. Everything in your body is telling you to stop, but there's that one thing that tells you to keep going. And I knew that that was the door to every other option available to me. Our community grew pretty fast once I opened up the Chief there, just because it was over the highway and right above town, so a lot of people could see it. We were highly trained in first aid and mountain rescue, so our confidence was growing really, really fast, and we were successful. We were all making it home every night. That was the honeymoon phase of the speed flying community, was that first year or two there. Our little speed flying community grew pretty fast, but it also grew pretty irresponsibly because there wasn't teachers or classes or even beginner terrain to start on.
Yeah, buddy. Oh yeah, like a champ.
We're suggesting that people that wanted to learn how to speed fly go get education through the Hang Glide and Paraglide Association. So the P1, which is your Paraglide Level 1, that's kind of the introduction course to flying, where you get to learn how an airfoil works, how to read wind, how to safely tie into your equipment. We as a community, we were always very aware of the difference of being a beginner paraglider and moving into speedwing. Right? Imagine learning to drive on a school bus. It's big, it's slow, it turns slow, it stops slow. And then when you go to a speedwing, it's like jumping in a Ferrari. That was part of our unofficial mentoring, was to help show these people the differences of what they learned in the P1 and what they're going to need to know under a speedwing.
Speed flying is an extreme sport. And like every extreme sport, the risks are potentially serious injury or death. So this is an obvious sport in need of education, training, and certification.
So we were trying to create a safe environment for people that were excited about what we were doing.
The community of speed flying and the community of paragliding were really separate. The dynamics between the two sports early on, and still a little bit now, is very similar to the dynamics when paragliding first came on this free flight scene. There's this new kid on the block, and they don't want him around, they're too dangerous. All the exact same adjectives that were used to describe hang gliders when they first came around and paragliders when they first came around, we're projecting the exact same onto this new group, which obviously I think is completely ridiculous and insane. As the sports have evolved, that cross-pollination has happened more.
Jeff Bertoya, or Hefe, was one of our new speed flyers. Hefe was just kind of finishing his P1. You're coming out of this class with just 12 or 15 flights under a big, slow beginner paraglider. We were on Haybrick. It's a 1,000-foot vertical cliff. And without having these beginner zones, you're using these expert launches where you don't have room for a mistake. When I saw him make the mistake, I witnessed a paragliding move. He touched that speed wing like he was still under his paraglider. We knew his wing struck the mountain. We heard him strike the mountain. Because it was such a big vertical cliff, we weren't able to see the end result. My hope was like, oh, maybe he's hung up on something. Hopefully he's just hanging there with a broken arm, and scrambled our way down the slope to go see and assess the situation. We got our eyes on Hefe, and we knew that it was no longer a rescue situation. So it was pretty traumatic. I saw it when I closed my eyes. I heard the noise over and over. Or if I heard similar noises, it would bring back terrifying images of the reality of what gravity can do to you. So after Hefe passed, there was a lot of wings for sale. That was a line for a lot of people. But I knew right off the bat that it wasn't gonna stop me. I met Tanya through my skiing group. Pro skier, outdoors enthusiast, went on big hiking and camping trips and chose the same chips at the store, and so it was going pretty good.
If I don't get outside on a daily, I'll probably lose my mind. It grounds you. There's a reason why you feel so good when you do get outside and you connect with Mother Nature, because we're meant to be outside all the time. And flying takes it to that next level.
One of the first dates that we went on, I hiked the Chief with her and flew off without her.
I've hiked the Chief a few times, and never had I seen anyone fly off of it, let alone this new human that I was, really interested in and really liked. But it was one of those things where you're like, this is frickin' cool.
When she got back to the bottom, her first question was just like, how do I do that?
Yeah, it's coming up fine, coming up perfect. Torpedo, little break.
I had no doubts that she was going to be good at it. So it was really easy for me to say yes and want to mentor her, is because she already understood and respected what being in the mountains is about. We're married now and we have a kid, and flying is the biggest part of our life. It's cool to share that with your wife.
For me, it was awesome to move back to the Okanagan. I love the Okanagan. Okanagan for me is home. Like, I grew up in Penticton. I think Sean might tell you a different reason that we moved to the Okanagan than I would.
One of the reasons Tanya and I moved to the Okanagan was to have more geography to work with for flying, to have our launches be safer, because when you're not launching off a cliff like the Chief and you're launching down a grassy slope, there's room for error here. And that's why it's the hub for Western Canada for speed flying.
It's embarrassing to say this, but Canada is one of the last countries in the world to integrate speed flying into their paragliding and hang gliding rating system. Speed flying is a part of our community. It is a cousin, a sister, a brother sport to our other sports, and it deserves the right to have the same structure of education, syllabus, endorsement, training, instructors to reduce the risk significantly.
Mama.
Yeah, ready? Yeah. It's going. Well, I'm telling you, I'm not gonna lie to you. I love seeing this setup. We got a lot of people here to speed fly. So I started here last year. I came and I did, 50 practice flights up there where you just got the wing up. And every time I come here, I'm meeting 2 or 3 new people. And those 2 or 3 new people come with all sorts of different qualities that nobody else has.
Whether to mentor, to be mentored, or to just progress, everybody gathers there every long weekend of the summer. To have everyone that has a bunch of different experience and a bunch of different types of wings in one spot for a long time, it just naturally ignites this conversation that's going to save someone's life. And yeah, it's always fun flying with friends. It gets so much cooler when you look over and there's someone upside down with you.
Yeah, right. That was fantastic, right? Amazing. That little note at the end that HPAC unanimously voted yes. They hadn't done that yet. I had them put it in the video so that it would put pressure on them to vote unanimously yes. This was a trick up my sleeve, and it worked like a damn charm. Because after I showed them the video, the next board meeting, they voted yes to accept speed flying. So they had no choice. I put it out there already. All right. With that being said, let's talk about the future of flying and the journey of speed flying in Canada. And I think that video set it up absolutely perfectly. Just the struggles that it was. You know, you heard in the video that Canada was one of the very last countries in the world to integrate speed flying into their rating system. So I'll have you go to the next slide, please. So I'm here to talk about teen pregnancy. It's really important. So in the 90s, in the United States, 6% of every teenage female got pregnant. And this was the highest by far of teen pregnancies since the baby boom. Significantly. So bad that the North American Health Association got together to try and figure out a solution on how to solve this. Now, you might find this a surprise, but they came up, all the greatest minds in the world thought, well, maybe education? Maybe education and training would prevent teen pregnancy. And sure enough, you can see this graph in the 90s. You see it starting to peak here? And boom, they start throwing money into the training and education of sexual education. And we can see how teen pregnancy declines over time. Next slide, please.
2020.
This is an example of the states that don't believe in sexual education. And you can see the significance in teen pregnancy.
24%.
Versus the states that believe in sexual education. The teen pregnancy is quite low.
6%.
Right? It's significant. Significant. Next slide, please. So, Sean's not going to pull out a banana and a condom. I promise you this. But I do want to talk about fucking and flying. Because every one of us, there's an innate desire to fly. This passion is much like other human desires. Fucking and flying, both of them are unstoppable forces of nature. You're not going to stop people from doing it. But with the right approach through training and education, we can ensure that people pursue it safely and responsibly.
Fly with a condom.
Next slide, please. So this was our journey. This is something for sure, you know, if we're talking about tenure here in the room, Sean is certainly probably the most tenured speed flyer in Canada, certainly on the West Coast. Very critical part of this journey. We see this, number one is the historical echoes and the initial resistance to speed flying. So how are we recreating and circling back through history over and over again? Number two, we'll touch on the overcoming the barriers and the path to recognition. And the third, paint the vision for the future of this sport.
So yeah, this is my part. So lots of parallels with any sport and education. We got the flying and fucking, and but because speed flying has a very in-depth route in skiing, we could also compare it to skiing and snowboarding. We all know the resistance that skiers and ski hills and manufacturers had to the advent of snowboarding. So I always like to just flip it a little bit for everybody. It's a great example to have. Imagine skiing came after snowboarding, right? Imagine every hill and every historical event that you can imagine started with snowboarding, right? There's one board, you're always tied in, and you have a leash. And then these skiers showed up to your snowboard hills and said, hey, we want to do this sport. We've got these pokey poles that are going to poke you in the face. And then we have these two skis that are very pokey as well. And they fly off our feet when we fall. And, they might slide down the hill and hit you as well. So that's kind of our analogy and, theme of the day is the resistance that these new sports have with the old school thinking is that, like snowboarders were rejected. They were marginalized. They were put to the boundaries. They were not even allowed on ski hills, even though it was actually arguably safer in many ways. And the differences that they had, the snowboarder was always tied to them. They had a leash on them. So that's kind of where Tyler and I approach this logistically with HPAC. We're just like, we have so many similarities. The differences are marginal, and like we need to just get through these differences so that we can offer people a safe kind of landscape to learn the same sport together. We're just all going down the hill with these beautiful pieces of magic nylon over our head, and there's no reason we can't get along. So, yeah.
So we faced a lot of resistance, and tying those parallels together, I think what we recognized was the big issues is that there's a demographic challenge. So with snowboarding and with speed flying, the demographics were significantly younger. And there was already an established group there with a political system and ways to move and influence others, where this new group that's coming on the scene just didn't really have that. And when we're talking about snowboarding versus skiing, I mean, speed flying versus paragliding is closer to like freestyle skiing versus downhill ski racing. The same people that sell paragliders sold speed wings, and this was happening in our community. So all the paragliding instructors had no problem selling speed wings, even though there wasn't a rating system. Yet HPAC, our governing body, was completely turning its back on it. The resistance was incredible. There was an incredible amount of skepticism, a lot of traditionalism. We saw the marginalization of the groups. And if you think about this idea of like calling your kid a monster, your kid's gonna act like a monster. If you keep calling this kid a monster, they're gonna act like a monster. So you keep calling these speed flyers like thugs and, ragtag group of cowboys, well, they're gonna live up to that.
And out of control and upside down and fast and reckless. Those are all the adjectives that were being used on speed flyers.
Don't forget sexy as hell.
Yeah, sexy as hell. They were jealous.
So we see what happened was we created this. What happened is we got into this cycle with our governing body. So HPAC kept saying, this sport is dangerous, we don't want to be a part of it. And we kept saying, it is dangerous because we can't provide education, training, all of the things that we're providing for these other sports to make them less dangerous and more accessible. And this was echoing it out, loop and loop and loop, and we couldn't get anywhere. And then this eventually resulted in 2 deaths in our community, which I think was very difficult for most of the people that were in the room or anybody who was related with them or knew them. And it wasn't hard to see the parallels of lack of education and training play a part, a huge role in this. Lack of mentorship, lack of standards, telling people that when you get your P1, the best speed wing to start on is not an 11-meter speed wing. Creating standards to say that unless you have so many flights, you shouldn't be stepping down to different sizes of wings. So that was really the goal, and that was the springboard for us to move into the next stage of what we're about to talk to, which is overcoming barriers and the path to recognition within Canada. So one of the first things that we needed to do is think about how we were going to infiltrate our governing bodies and dismantle any obstacles in the way. This included, in Russia, you poison people. We didn't quite have that. We weren't going to throw them out windows either. So we had to start getting really creative of how we were going to take over HPAC. So, this was initially on in my political career. Nobody knew who the hell I was. So I decided to run for president of West Coast Soaring Club and begin making a name for myself by doing really cool stuff. We focused on building community, so all community things, making it fun, bringing back the life to the club. When I joined West Coast Soaring Club, we had one single event. It was a repack clinic, and it was terrible. No offense, but it was like a machine. You had these very wonderful people volunteering their time, and they would just hand over their parachute, and these people would pack it. It was like a machine. Just get them through, get them out. There was no education. There was no teaching them how to repack their own reserve. It really was a sad excuse. So we got in there. We created community. We created events, and this was how we were able to start making relationships
And I think the big thing too is that you created rewards too. Like you started handing out, ground level awards and rewarding people for trying and volunteering and putting their heart and soul into the lifestyle that we've all chosen of free flight. So yeah, I really admire that turnaround just as soon as you became president of the very small West Coast Soaring Club there.
Yes, and the West Coast Soaring Club actually is one of the largest clubs in Canada, which is a good place to start if you want to start building relationships. You're going to meet a lot of people, so side plug, volunteer for the club. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
You make some positive change. The other obstacles we were trying to overcome was the geographic obstacles. There isn't a whole lot of spaces out on the BC coast to begin learning to speed fly. Our options are really limited, so we had to start figuring out how do we train new students in speed flying? And the other aspects were cultural challenges. So yes, certainly there is this young ragtag group. So how do we try and influence them to say, hey guys, well let's, this is how HPAC is looking at us. They're looking at us like we're just doing drugs and flying and partying and drunk and we're totally crazy and dangerous and reckless. And how can we change the impression of the community and how people are looking at us? I think part of that is really getting people together and letting them know that we actually have a future and we can influence and make positive change and create supportive ecosystems with relationships, collaborations, negotiations. We went to ski hills. Mount Baldy was a critical one for allowing them. They were the first mountain in maybe Canada,
North America?
Certainly here to allow paragliders and speed flyers flying on piste at the resort. That was a huge win for us to overcome that geographic obstacle.
Yeah, and it gave people the landscape to be able to ski launch and fly small runs or big runs and then use the chairlift to get back up and get their time and their laps in on piste, because as we all know, paragliding in Canada kind of shuts down unless you're a snowmobiler, have a crazy ATV or side-by-side. The access becomes very limited during the winter time, and that's why we have these club talks, is because everybody's sitting around doing nothing during the winter. So that's the opposite with speed flying, as you guys saw with the movie. Speed riding, using your skis while you're using these wings, is a very large component to our sport. So to have Mount Baldy and Oliver be on board with that, to accept us without the HPAC rating, was the most, I'd say, fundamental push to public exposure that we've had as speed flyers. We were able to use the lifts. We were getting 8 to 12 runs a day. Paragliders were on the same launch as speed flyers, and we were all on skis. And it turned into a big party at night, and just like the movie said, just having that community, having everyone in the same spot, having dinner together, having drinks together, it ignites a natural conversation that's going to, like I said, save someone's life. Right? It's going to be like, hey, Tyler, next time try putting a little more pressure in that launch and you'll get off faster or whatever, right? Like, so that was what was beautiful about having Mount Baldy, and we both hope that now that it's an official rating, that we're going to be able to open a lot more ski areas to our sport for both paragliders and speed flyers, so that we don't have to go out of bounds, so that we don't have to be sled heads, so that we don't have to have avalanche equipment and training to be able to enjoy our sports. We want to be in bounds, using chairlifts, and having avalanche control for our off season that we call the winter here. So that was a huge win for us.
Question, guys. Does Baldy still allow flying?
Not under the current management.
We lost Baldy due to a change in management, unfortunately. So we are hoping to circle back around with them. Now that we have recognition from HPAC, we're looking to circle back around with all of the Canadian resorts. We'll get back into that when we talk about the vision and future of the sport. And one of the final things was really, taking a leadership role. So instead of just lobbying HPAC, actually stepping into HPAC and saying, we're going to create the SOP, we're going to create the rules, and this is what we want to do, because we want to take a leadership role in defining the future of this sport. Who better to do it than the people that are actually doing that sport?
And that's my biggest motivation, is just securing our sites, whether it's paragliding or speed flying. As you may notice in the world right now, there's a huge liability issue. No one's allowed to have fun anymore. And our future is at risk, whether it's using logging roads, whether it's using private property, whether it's being inbound in skiing. That was Tyler and mine biggest motivation, was to secure the future of our current launches because of insurance.
And good news, if you have not heard, this was a big project of HPAC, was to increase our insurance. So we went from $5 million to $10 million in insurance without adding any additional costs to the membership. In fact, you're going to see a reduction in your membership dues. So,
because we have it black and white. We've done the paperwork, and we've satisfied the underwriters, and now we can go to our private landowners, go to our local ski hills, and secure safe flying for everybody, anyone who's got nylon over their head.
All right, let's talk about the future. What does this look like? So over the past year of implementing the SOP into the system, we flew in a senior speed flying instructor, one of the best speed flyers in the world, to come over and teach our first batch of speed flying instructors. And then what we did after that is let those instructors sit with the SOP that we had created, provide some feedback on what could be adjusted or what could be changed, and they've just actually handed over a final draft of that SOP, which we'll be launching shortly. So that was really the major hurdle and step, is getting that first batch in, finalizing that SOP, so then we can move forward and begin properly training and bringing new speed flying flyers into the system and into the fold.
And it was like a question of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, we didn't know, we didn't understand if we were gonna like get everyone rated under our SOPs as S1, S2, S3, and 4, which is speed wing 1, 2, and 3, and 4, just like parallel with paragliding, P1, 2, 3, and 4. But we decided, because we secured Jamie Lee, which he mentioned was the most certified and experienced and awesome pilot in the world, to come rate us, we just jumped right to the chicken. We're like, we have to create an instructor base. Tyler had a vision to not just hand pick people. We actually put it into the community as a vote. We I hate to say it, but we put it in the Facebook group that we have for the 200 or 300 speed flyers in Canada, and we asked them who they wanted to see jump the egg right to the chicken and become instructors. As you may know, they are the highest ranking pilots in our association. So I'm more than honored, Tonia's here too, to be chosen by our community to jump the egg stage and go right to the instructor stage. And now we have a very solid core of 6 instructors that are going to be able to introduce and rate the speed flyers in Canada, so that we can create a safe future for those that want to play our game.
So if you're looking to speed fly or an omelet, you want to go to Sean or Tonya. They got the eggs for you.
And we will scramble them upside down.
You'll have a lot of fun and learn a lot, and they're both extremely great instructors and have been doing this for a very long time. So, the future is to continue the ongoing advocacy and education of the sport, which is why we're here this evening. We also want it to be widely accepted and practiced safely across Canada. And then the next stage is really to begin to advocate for ski hills to accept flying, because there's no safer and easier way, more approachable, more accessible to learn how to speed fly than on skis. So that is really where we're at right now for the future of speed flying. Fucking and flying. Both are unstoppable. But with the right approach, training, and education, we can ensure that they are pursued safely and responsibly. Next slide. This is my call to action. I call upon all of you to play an active role in the evolution of our sports community. Engage in the politics, contribute to the dialogue, and be the agent of change you wish to see. Thank you.
This is awesome, guys. I'm actually very impressed. Thank you. Slide. One more slide. I started in the sport moving from skydiving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Get up there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Come on up.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Jelson. Some of you may know me.
Hi, Gelson.
Hi,
guys.
Jelson.
Hi, guys. Yeah. So I actually went for a transition from skydiving to speed flying first.
Which is popular.
Yeah. So I was already a coach in skydiving. I was doing, canopy flying, doing all the course of canopy training in Dillon and, But then when I was working in Colombia, it impressed me, the mountains and all the stuff. And I saw this guy speed fly. I was like, this is what I want. Yeah. So I started there with somebody, which I was very fortunate. He was getting instruction from the, swing speed flying team, back in the days. And I was very fortunate. I got instruction there. And this, from there, I moved to paragliding. So you will in the reverse, sort
Same
of
here.
what.
Same here.
Yeah.
I started on a speed.
But I, seeing this today, it blows me away. I mean, I think there's a new generation coming in, and people want to get into the sport. They don't know how to. I taught my son to speed fly when he was 13, and I used the manuals that I had for paragliding. I taught him ground handling. He knows him, Gabriel, and Gabriel too. So, he's a great flyer. But I very disciplined approach in ground handling and going to the local hills in Merritt, grass fields and no rocks, no cliff, no nothing. And I can see what you guys have done and what you're proposing. I mean, this is the way to go, especially if the new generation coming in and, get them to, take a syllabus, on the sport. That's something that actually is not too complicated, but it's not going to throw them on a cliff and get them, injured or whatever. And I think there's too many injuries in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I had a bad experience myself because I was not prepared long ago, and now this year is going to be 10 years, and something that marked my life completely. And I got all that experience unhurt, no scratch, no, there was like a miracle that I came out of that thing alive, and that changed my whole perspective, not only speed flying, but in paragliding. So I got deep, very deep in study and all of this stuff. So I find myself very disciplined today, and the fact that, that bad experience, but not many people had, the chance to come out of that
alive.
Yeah. The skills.
It does.
It does.
So does
you hit the
paragliding.
ground fast, you're gone, right? But I would like to congratulate you guys for this. Number one, I think it's awesome. That's fantastic. Bringing people from overseas to, to share the knowledge. One of my biggest friends now lives in New Zealand, and he's great speed flyer, paraglider, skydiver, camera flyer, and we talk, often, and he says how advanced in New Zealand, speed flying is on the training and certification. I was like, wow. And now you guys doing this is like fantastic. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's who we brought.
Whatever I can help, please, they are to help. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
John, so what does it look like for just walking in, not speed flyer, you know, guys want to start learning. So they call you, and then what's first steps?
Yeah, so you know, Tyler and core group of the people in our community came up with SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, to present to HPAC, and they were like kind of loose. And then, you know, with having Jamie Lee, the New Zealand instructor, come and teach our course, we really refined the boundaries and limitation to speed flying, and you know, got a really good taste as to what the global standards were in France, in Switzerland, and in Italy, and in New Zealand, as to those transitional limitations. So that's what Tyler was really motivated in, was that, and I can tell you by personal experience, I did not learn another sport to learn speed flying. I came to speed flying with no canopy experience, very little canopy experience. So, and that's what we were motivated to do. We're like, man, this is a separate sport, so let's come up with these standard operating procedures where people can just enter speed flying when they want to be a speed flyer. And the way I relate it to, just like we related skiing and snowboarding, is just like bikes, right? If you want to be a downhill mountain biker, but the only available training is on a road bike, yeah, it's a bike. It's got a seat, it's got handles, and it's got 2 tires, but it's not a downhill mountain bike. So why go get certified on a road bike when truly you want to transition to a downhill mountain bike? And that was like, I got to give all the credit to Tyler's infiltration, was just like, we wanted to create this as a separate situation. So just like P1, our S1 protocols are that you are going to come into speed flying with 0 canopy experience, and we're going to do that on skis. So as pilots would understand, trim speed is a very important factor to our sport. It's really easy to launch a paraglider by foot because the trim speeds are very low. They're 13, I'm just throwing this out there, a very average 13 kilometer trim speed, which means you only need to run 13 kilometers an hour in order to create lift out of that wing to lift you off the mountain. But when we're working with speed wings, trim speeds are up to 40. You know, my wing, one of my wings is 82 kilometers an hour for my weight, is my trim speed. So as a beginner, as someone who's never had canopy experience, we have created limitations that your first experience with a speed wing is going to be on skis. And again, that's why it's very important to have these ski hills on board, is it'll avoid any of that backcountry access. I was fortunate enough that I was a heli ski guide for my whole career, so it was really easy for me to get in the backcountry, up onto glaciers with snowmobiles and helicopters, to explore speed riding. But for the average person, you're asking them, again, to do a whole other sport. You're asking them to get into their AST, their avalanche skills training. They have to buy avalanche backcountry gear, all the PEEPS probes and airbags and everything that's standard right now. And then they have to have skins, ski touring gear, or snowmobile. So that's our limitation for beginners, is that we are mandating people. It's a terrible word, but we're suggesting that people start on skis, just so that your trim speeds are easy to manage. It's really easy to go 40 kilometers an hour on skis when you launch and land. But if you are transitioning from skydiving or from paragliding, if you are an experienced paraglider, you will be able to move into the S2, which is like your P2 kind of zone, where you understand weather, you know how to torpedo, you know what trim speed is, you know how airfoil works, you know how to get a wing above your head. So that's kind of where we've really tailored our SOPs, is creating that division between a complete beginner and someone who's transitioning from skydiving or paragliding. So those are the two avenues into the sport, are winter only or having a lot of a paragliding or skydiving experience. And we're just going to teach you the differences of the equipment and the technical aspects of the sports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, I got a question here. I got asked by some of my friends, which are beginner paragliders. They finish their P2, and once in a while they see me flying. So I wanna learn that. But they are already paragliders, right? And one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of people that actually started speed flying from skydiving, they have the experience with the wing, but number one is a different wing. Absolutely different.
Totally different.
No connection whatsoever.
Yeah.
And secondly, skydivers have no idea about weather. They have no idea about thermals. They have no idea about how they influence the mountain, the wind, and all of the stuff. And a lot of people get injured because they have no clue about the basics of this, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So how is that in the SOP for people that actually are moving into the sport, which that, I would say lack of knowledge, because one of the things that actually get people in danger is actually not understanding the mountain and not understanding time to fly, thermals, not flying with thermals, and the wind that he thinks is in the face is not, it's a rotor coming in, that's where the danger is.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can put it that way. I mean, you can correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I think the worst pilots and craziest things I've ever seen is a skydiver under a speedwing canopy. It's an ugly sight to see. And so we actually created a special sort of SOP for people coming over from skydiving. I don't know if you've seen that at all yet, but this is to break bad habits. It's to address very specific things that skydivers are coming to the table with that we need to break. We need to say, no, do not pull the front risers.
Don't touch the A's.
Yeah. Do not pull on the A's. Do not toggle monkey.
And the big thing,
yeah.
in the pilot world too, is where, skydivers are parachutal. Those are parachutes. They're not airfoils.
Yeah.
And down, that's it. So that's the transition that we've identified. Internationally with Jamie Lee, when we did our instructor course, it was a very large topic. They have standards in New Zealand for transitioning from paragliding or skydiving. And just to show you the difference that they have in New Zealand, you only need, I think it's, please don't quote me, it's 50 paraglide flights or to transition from a paraglider to a speedwing, but it's 250 skydives to go from skydiving to paragliding. So even internationally, they understand that difference. That skydiving is a parachute, and we run airfoils, and they're totally different machines, even though they look similar. So
Tyler and I, we've been to Soboba, and you see when there's a speed week, a speed flyer coming from paragliding and a speed you can see in the air.
Yes.
Oh,
craziness.
it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And at first, we didn't even create an SOP for skydiving in Canada here because the drastic differences. But of course, we don't want to marginalize any community, and we've updated the SOPs to make sure that we include them as well.
Guys,
But it's
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a very different course. Even in my my offerings as an instructor, I'm going to have a very different course for transitions from paragliders and a very separate course for skydivers coming into speed flying. Just me personally, that's what I'm going to do with my school. And it's going to be camps so that I can have other instructors and we can have 2-on-1 instruction just to share the differences of those two pieces of nylon. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any questions online there, Jeremy?
All right.
Of course, because everyone's celebrating Easter.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having both of us. Thanks for Sean for making a trip out here. He came from Okanagan, South Okanagan, all the way from Oliver.
All the way.
Yeah. So, big round of applause for Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys, man.
And Tanya, too.
Yeah, Tanya and baby
Yeah.
Marley. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, man.